On this first episode of Solo in the Shop, I'll give you a brief history of my journey to becoming a woodworker. I'll also talk about some shop safety issues beyond how to use a tool safely. And then I'll wrap up with what's on the bench now. Whether you are a hobbyist, weekend warrior, making commissions for friends and family, or already a full-time maker, if you are solo in your shop, this is the show for you. I'm Ronald Lowe's, the host of Solo in the Shop, a woodworking podcast discussing everything from current projects, tools and techniques, decisions around running a small business, and much more. So if you frequently find yourself alone and covered in sawdust, follow my journey and we can be solo in the shop together. Welcome, friends. I'm Ronald, and this is episode 1 of Solo in the Shop. Today, I want to talk about shop safety, not tool safety. I hope you already know not to let the table saw meet your fingers, but there are a few other thoughts I want to share about general safety in the shop. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in for a few minutes, and let's get into it. Before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about my background. I am by no means a woodworking expert. If you're coming to this show looking for guidance on how to be the best woodworker, this probably isn't the place. My focus is really on getting started, running a small shop, and dealing with the problems that come up, whether it's running the business, getting customers, dealing with budgets, dealing with delivery, things like that. And I got here kind of the long way, but my story is probably familiar to many of you. I grew up with a dad who had a workshop, and I spent a lot of time with him working, cleaning, learning about shop safety, making projects, and generally getting confident in the workshop. For a while, he had a home renovation business that I helped out, mostly tearing things apart. I love the demo part, knocking down walls, and I did a weekend project tearing down a chimney. It was just bricks and cinder block and a huge mess, but just tearing it up and getting comfortable with hammers, sledgehammers, and eventually rebuilding, getting into framing and using the pneumatics, things like that. So I got comfortable with the tools. I wouldn't say I was a great craftsman, but I was confident that I could learn how to use tools, and that served me well when I started becoming a homeowner and fixing things around the house. Things break. Usually it's me breaking them. And rather than calling for help, I would figure out a way to fix things myself. Along the way, I got into computer programming, recently retired after 35 years of writing code. I was one of the early programmers on kayak.com, the travel site, and I worked there for about 19 years and recently retired to start working in the shop. That transition, kind of, again, a very familiar story. I made some furniture for a friend. That came out great. He told friends, word spread, the phone started ringing, and I realized that I was at a point where I was enjoying making furniture more than sitting behind a desk. And I was starting to get enough business that I decided I can't work full time in an office and try and make furniture nights and weekends, because that left no time for family life, for travel, for lots of other things that come up, soccer games and stuff like that. So on vacation, My wife and I were in the Caribbean in a beach bar, enjoying the sun and some drinks and thinking about coming back to reality, going back to work. And that's when it kind of hit me. I was like, I just want to make tables. And my wife was very supportive. She's like, you should just do that then. I wondered whether that was a decision that we should be making in a beach bar, but we realized that a beach bar was the perfect place for that decision because that's where you get perspective. That's where you realize what is making you happy and you want to extend that feeling. And for me, that meant making a pretty big change. I had planned on working at the desk for another couple years, and in that beach bar decided it was time to pull the trigger and do something else. So we got back from vacation. I sold my car. I bought a truck. I had a workshop that was at our lake house. It was a small shop above the garage. And started thinking about what it would take to actually make it a business and what did I need to do. So I started getting organized and making decisions. And this podcast kind of grew out of that process of what are the things that I needed to do, the connections I needed to make, the techniques I needed to learn, the tools I needed to buy. Those are all things that, as a solo woodworker, need to be addressed to be successful. The first of those, and therefore the first in this podcast series, was dealing with shop safety. In the buzzing world of a wood shop, safety should always be the top priority. This obviously starts with personal protection. At the very minimum, you need to be protecting your eyes. That should go without saying. But in the interest of completeness, there it is. Additionally, if you want your golden years to be long and enjoyable, protect your ears and your lungs. Our tools are loud, and prolonged exposure is a serious hazard. While it may be fun to think about tuning out the world, the reality is that hearing is a gift we often take for granted. Simple foam earplugs help, but I love big noise canceling headphones. Plus, I get the added benefit of being able to listen to music or a podcast or a book while I work. Several years ago, I met a guy that manufactured kits for building wood strip canoes. He had an incredible shop in a large barn. As we talked, he explained that he was shutting everything down and quitting the business. Around here, he was kind of the only guy making these, so I asked why. He said after years of cutting forms and strips, he had developed emphysema and would not live much longer. Holy cow, what a slap in the face. Years pursuing a passion only to have that very thing cut his life short. That stuck with me, and I'm a strong advocate for respirator use. We love making stuff. Keep your body safe so you can live a full life in and out of the shop. One key element to shop safety is having a well-equipped first aid kit that goes beyond just tiny bandages. Shop injuries can range from minor cuts to more severe accidents, and having supplies like gauze, antiseptic, and even a basic splint can make a crucial difference. A few years ago, my dad sent me a first aid kit. This was not a store-bought red box, but a full-size toolbox that he stuck his own Red Cross on. My dad was, as long as I can remember, a survivalist. He learned skills while in the Air Force and in Vietnam that he carried with him for a lifetime. Chief among these was the idea of being prepared for the unexpected. So the kit he sent me was not full of Band-Aids. It had, essentially, surgical supplies. This included scalpels, needles and thread, rolls of tape and gauze, heavy absorbent pads, slings, and a tourniquet. This kit is no joke. I keep it near the door of the shop, and usually I avoid blocking access to it. though I suspect if I really needed it, I would kick and flail at any obstacles like I was having a tantrum until I got what I needed. Luckily, knock on wood, I have not needed it so far, but it gives me comfort knowing that it's there. Besides the first aid kit, keeping a phone within arm's reach is important. In the event of an emergency, a quick call for help can be a game changer. Make sure emergency service numbers are prominently displayed for easy access, ensuring there is no time wasted in a critical situation. In today's shops, a mobile phone is best. You can't really ask Siri or Google to call out on a landline, but you definitely can with your cell. If you have not already, try making some calls without dialing with your fingers. Don't practice by calling for an ambulance, but try to call a friend or family just by asking your phone to make the call. This kind of practice will take the edge off the panic when you are focused on an injury and not confidently pressing buttons. Fire safety is paramount, so having at least one working fire extinguisher on hand is non-negotiable. Make sure, again, that the path is clear, you know where they are, and you can get to them easily. Stacking wood and tools in front of the fire extinguisher is not smart. Combine this with functional smoke detectors to catch any potential fire hazards before they escalate. And speaking of fire risks, keep a designated can for oily rags that may be prone to combustion. Some people don't believe it happens, but it does. I've seen it. I had it happen to me. A small step, having that bucket with a metal lid, could prevent a huge disaster. If your wood shop has people outside who might need to be alerted in case of an accident, consider installing a wireless intercom system or providing walkie-talkies. Quick communication can be vital in ensuring that help arrives promptly. My shop, as I've mentioned, is above my garage, and we have walkie-talkies that go. I have one that sits in a charger in the shop, and we have one that sits in the charger in the kitchen. That way, if I know my wife or anyone is in the main house and I need help, I can just grab that walkie-talkie and squawk loudly, and hopefully help will arrive quickly. Again, not something I've needed to do. It's more likely I've used the walkie-talkies to get called down for dinner time because I lose track. But it's good to know that they're there. Remember, when it comes to woodworking, being prepared isn't just about precision in the craft. It's about safeguarding yourself and your space from unforeseen challenges. Prioritize your safety, and your woodworking journey will be both fulfilling and secure. Keep it safe. Before I leave you today, I figure since this is a woodworking podcast, I'll give you an update on what I've got going on the bench. There are a few projects going on. I have a friend who is opening a flower shop in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and I have provided her with some tables and the wraparound for her checkout area. And the vibe of her shop is very social. So there's a lot of seating, there's a lot of occasional tables, and there's places to do some work if you want to build your own bouquet and things like that. So I am finishing up 2 chess tables that are going to go in there later this week. They came out great. The idea was to make one that was dark wood. I've got a nice dark walnut, and another one that is light wood that is curly birch. And each of those, I cut out the squares with the shaper origin. And then on the dark one, I used a white epoxy to fill in. And on the lighter one, a black epoxy. Personally, I think they came out awesome. They're finished with Rubio, and they are mounted on bases from Flowy Line that look like chess pawns. So it's kind of a cool combination of the chessboard with the pawn looking base. Additionally, I've got a countertop that I'm finishing. This was not an original piece, but it was a repair. A local family had an island with this walnut island top, had two epoxy rivers running through it, and the epoxy was just terrible. It was full of air bubbles, and it was clear, and then they wanted it green, so the person that made it painted the bottom green so that the green would show through, and it just was not great. So I agreed to take that and brought it in, cleaned it all off with the router sled, and then went through the epoxy with a router and hogged out about 1/2 inch of the old epoxy. And then I painted all of that with black epoxy just to create essentially a light barrier. And then that was a real thin layer. And then I poured a thicker forest green mixed with a little black. And that came out awesome. So that is getting finished now and is getting delivered later this week as well. And then next up, I am building for the first time an extension table. It's got the funky hardware where you pull on one side and the other side kind of slides out automatically. And then it's got the folding butterfly mechanism. So that is the next big thing. And that will start hopefully Monday of next week, if I can get the wood in the shop. I designed legs for that table, and they're different. They're kind of funky, and I cut them out. I cut out a template anyway with the shaper, and then made 4 pieces that are all getting stuck together in pairs, and then have to get mounted to the apron. It's going to be an interesting series of problem-solving tasks, but I'm excited, and I've got a few other things coming, but those are the things that are on the bench right now. So that is all I have for you today. I appreciate you listening if you made it to the end, and I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you got value from it and would like to help the show grow, I'd appreciate a review wherever you listen. Be sure to check the show notes for links to my socials or any extra stuff we discussed today. Until next time, stay safe in your shop, and we'll talk again soon.